Hello, everyone. It's Charlene Lee, and I'm really happy to be here today to talk about one of my favorite issues and topics, which is aligning your organization around your strategy. Now, I have been talking about this what feels like decades because it's one thing to have a strategy, and it's a completely different thing to communicate it to make sure that everybody in an organization knows what it is. Because a strategy doesn't do you any good if it's a presentation sitting in a file on your laptop someplace, or if it's a big binder that's sitting on your shelf. Those are not usable, workable strategies. So today I want to talk about what do you do with this beautiful strategy that you've put together, and how do you ensure that everybody in your organization knows what it is. So I welcome you today to, let's see, let me get my oh, where are my comments? Here we go. Just welcome you today to share where you're coming from. And also, how do you communicate your, I'm not liking this. Let's see, how do I get this to not scroll? I thought the scrolling would work and it's terrible. All right. So share how you communicate your generative AI strategy so that it ensures alignment across the organization. And I'm talking about up and down, to the left, to the right, across all the different parts of your organization. And so this could be really difficult if you're working at a very large multinational company. It can just be equally difficult if you are at a small organization. And I even talked to some more people who are individual solopreneurs to go like, I can't even remain focused on my strategy sometimes, even though it's just myself. So again, focusing on strategy, what you're trying to accomplish, where you want to play, how you want to win, and what is the thing that you want to accomplish more than anything else is a difficult thing to constantly remember. So I do have some slides to share today, and I'm just going to put out where they're going to be available. And let me get my slides up. So today I'm talking about bridging the AI communications gap, and I just want to start by telling a quick story. I was working with an organization. This was quite a while ago now, and was working with the marketing organization all day on how to put together a transformational, disruptive digital transformation strategy. And we're working through the whole day. And at the end of the day, the CMO came in and was doing an open Q&A with the team. And I just raised my hand. I'm just like, it'd be helpful to just, hear from you. What are your top strategic goals for the year? And so we can just reinforce that with the team because I'm really adamant about strategy. And they turned it back onto the team. Like, we just had an offsite about this a few weeks ago. You tell Charlene what our strategy is. And then there was this awkward silence. And people were starting to like look into their files and like trying to look through their notebooks, and they couldn't remember what the strategy was. And this CMO was really embarrassed, like, "Well, come on, team, come." I mean, they were giving a couple hints. "Remember, we talked about the customer," and it was not a pretty picture. So it became so evident to me that you can say what the strategy is, but unless you live it, unless you understand it at the core of what you are doing every day, you are not going to be working on that strategy. And you're going to be working on whatever it is that pops up in your email, whatever is the latest project, the biggest fire we have to put out, rather than thinking about how do we get and accomplish our strategy. So I have these three questions that I often ask organizations. And I started doing this when like 15 years ago, pretty soon after that happened. And I would go in when I started working with an organization or just came and did a workshop or a speech for the day. I would ask for permission to walk around the organization and just talk to people for about half an hour. And I would ask people these three questions. Who is your future customer? In other words, what are you trying to accomplish in the future? What's your vision for what the future would look like? And what's our strategy to be able to meet the needs of those future customers? If we're here today, then what do we have to do to get to where we want to be in the future? And the third question I would ask people is, what are you personally doing to contribute to the success of that strategy? And being able to have confidence that every single person in your organization knows what the strategy is, knows what the key steps are to make that strategy a success, and understands their role in making a success is the key to strategy alignment. And so that's why I want to focus on this a little bit today, because I think it's so important as you're putting together your generative AI strategy, even before it's finished, or especially if it's already finished. How are you going to communicate it so that it creates alignment? So let me go on and talk about some of the challenges of communicating generative AI strategy. First of all, people are really worried, and your employees are worried about job security. They're afraid of being replaced. They don't understand how AI is going to integrate into the workflows and what skills may be needed. What's going to be asked of them? Will they be able to meet those new expectations? There's a tremendous mistrust of AI. So they hear about all the hallucinations and the ways that it can go wrong. And the last thing they want to do is to go near it, because that safety, that psychological safety, and the actual skills aren't there to give them confidence that they can be successful with it. And if in general, I often hear this from people, that if the generative AI fails, then I will fail and I will be blamed and I'll be penalized. I could even lose my job. So until somebody says, I have to go do this, I'm not going near it. We know that there's a training and skills gap. The statistics and surveys show that employees want to be trained, and they're frustrated that the organizations are doing nothing to train them. So they're feeling left behind, and that they're going to be overtaken by all these changes. And then finally, there's just resistance to change. I oftentimes run into this phrase, well, that's the way we do things around here. And that's a dangerous thing to do. I call this the Twitter effect. You just every time somebody says that, my instinct is to say, "Well, why do you do it that way? Is there a better way? Is this the best way? Could there be new and different ways that could be it can help you do things in a better way?" And so these are all challenges when it comes to communicating and implementing an AI strategy, because people's hackles are already going to be up, and they're going to be looking for opportunities to say, well, this, I don't trust this strategy. I don't believe that this is going to be successful for not only the organization, but also could have very negative impacts on me. So understanding what those challenges are is a really important thing. And it's especially true because generative AI is very different than any other technology you have implemented in an organization. And that's because when you put in a generative AI strategy, you are going in and hopefully thinking about the transformational possibilities and the opportunities that generative AI gives you. I talked about this last week in creating value. There's a productivity and efficiency angle. There is the angle around how do you improve the customer experience, potentially with new products and services. And the third most interesting area is how do you develop new capabilities that result in competitive advantages that allow you to disrupt and transform the organization and potentially your industry. And so, what you're talking about here is literally changing the DNA of the organization. And that is not an easy task. So, from the get go, think about how you are transforming the organization and how you need to communicate and align an organization around transformation, not just change. And I would encourage you to think about this as not traditional change management, because you won't get there because of that resistance and those challenges I talked to you about before. Instead, you have to think about how am I going to prepare my organization for transformation? And this again is a very, very different task. So, a couple things I'm going to talk about first. All right. So, here, there are going to be 5 ways that I want to talk about today. So, the first one is to actually start communicating before your strategy is finalized. So, if you're working on your strategy and who isn't working on their strategy, now is the time to be very transparent about the fact that you are having a strategy, that you anticipate that we're going to create competitive advantage. We're going to do this with confidence and intention, and the challenge of this is that if it takes you too long to actually develop the strategy, then people may start getting very anxious. Like, what's going on? They announced there was a strategy, but it's nowhere to be seen. So, setting expectations about how quickly it'll be developed, when you're going to have updates, providing constant updates, and then getting feedback, committing to getting feedback from people early on in the process is an important part. And again, this is not about necessarily involving everybody in the process. In fact, again, you may have seen some of my other content that I talk about having a very small group of people initially to set what the strategy, the overall high level strategy is going to be. So I think that is absolutely key. And I love this comment from Jay that trust, integrity, and teamwork are absolutely essential when you're trying to drive a transformation. All right, let me go back and to the presentation. All right, here we go. Um, the next thing is about addressing psychological safety. And this again is the fact that how am I going to be safe? Am I going to be able to fail? And I love the quote that I've heard people talk about in multiple contexts that it's not AI that's going to replace you. It's a somebody using AI that's going to replace you. And focusing on the fact that it's not about AI replacing you, it's about AI augmenting your work, and especially for frontline workers, that this is not about replacing them, but augmenting them. And that hopefully we're looking at identifying repetitive tasks that nobody likes to do that allows you then to do the work that is meaningful to you. And for senior leaders and managers, it's also a way to help you be more strategic, to be a strategic enabler. And it's a really important and differentiated message to give to your middle and senior leaders compared to, for example, your frontline or middle managers. And in particular, I think it's so important to create what I call a safe to fail environment. I mean, I this is what it feels like for many people. It feels like you're walking out onto this gangplank and it's getting really wobbly. And you're using these tools. No one really knows how to use them. The training is basic and there are so many questions. It is just a completely new space. And so creating safe spaces where people can experiment, they can develop that confidence is absolutely essential. And I've done a lot of work around how do you create psychological safety. It is not an overnight thing. It is one bit by bit, experience by experience, and you have to create the scaffolding for people to be able to climb up literally the generative AI use ladder and be able to feel confident that they can go higher and higher and higher. All right. So those are the first two things. The third thing I want to talk about today is, in particular, about tailoring some training programs. I see some questions coming in. So by all means, ask questions in the comments and I'll get to them as fast as I can too, as well. Okay. So the third area is tailoring the training programs. I oftentimes work with organizations and they have a one size fits all training for everybody. And that's if it's about compliance, how to stay safe, how to use these tools, what data not to use, that's a good starting point. But that's not training. That's compliance and risk management. You really want to have training that's really tailored to each group. And the more you can tailor to them, the more relevant it's going to be. So for frontline people, upskilling so that they can use it for operational efficiency. Again, some of the best training programs I've seen are within a particular organization, within a team, and a job function. They're saying very specifically, here are the tools. These are the ways to use them. You will see these benefits. And in fact, we're going to make sure that you're getting those so that if you're not seeing the results that you have to see, then we want to make sure you get additional support and training to make sure you get the results that we want. For managers, it's very different. It's not about productivity. It's a little bit about the productivity, but it's of your team. And it's about how do you take the data and the information? How do you do better reviews and management of people, even scheduling? All those decisions you have to make as a manager day in, day out. How can you use generative AI to help you with some of those tasks? And then for senior leaders, again, a completely different set of tasks and training. How do you use it to help you be more innovative, to look at decision making, use it as a sounding board? So again, tailoring the decisions and the training in different ways is absolutely crucial. All right, I'm going to go through the last two ones. This one is something that I think is oftentimes missing in comms, and that is to make sure you're having a great story, a really compelling vision of the future you want to create. And it could be about competitive advantage. It can be a story about how your customers' lives are going to be improved because of what you're doing with generative AI. And I think it's so important for people to be able to tell their own stories, to make this strategy their own. If you think about your strategy as a narrative, as an overall roadmap, then each person going on that journey is going to have their own experience, their own adventure. So give them avenues to be able to talk about that. Because the key difference between a traditional change management and a transformation is this: you are going to need to have people to create a movement with their stories. You need a movement because this is really hard. Transformations, by their nature, are painful. I have yet to see an organization go through a meaningful transformation, one that creates a significantly different competitive advantage, one that it makes a big difference to the business, where that transformation was easy. Those transformations are always difficult, always hard, which is why the communications are so important. And in particular, that vision of what you're trying to create, and then encouraging people to create their own visions, to step in as leaders themselves, regardless of title, regardless of the position that they are in, and to be able to create this movement to, again, encourage more people to come on and see themselves as leaders in that movement themselves. There's a great quote that comes from forgetting the name. I can see it right in front of me, and it's about you know it's a movement when you're no longer leading from the front. And it's again a different way to think about movements. And we as leaders are typically not trained on how to create movements. So I think this is a very important thing to think about: is how do you communicate what you're trying to do? And my mentor in strategy, Roger Martin, would say the best strategies are stories that say, this is where we are today. This is the journey we're going to go on. These are the adventures and the challenges we're going to overcome. And we're going to end up here. And this is the story that you want to tell over and over again, because people remember stories. They don't remember slides. All right. The last, I think that was the last. Oh, missed. Sorry. I missed one here. I don't know where it went. But the fifth one was, oh, that's interesting. I lost one of them. The fifth one was really about the culture and making sure that you are. I'm sorry. It's about developing two-way communication channels. I don't know where my slide went, and it's really about developing communication channels to make sure there are feedback loops. Again, places where people can share their stories, but also uh, share their concerns because of those challenges that we talked about. Being able to use town halls and Q&A and anonymous surveys, those are the things that become extremely important to make sure you have that trust and transparency. All right, I'm going to go over to some of the questions that are over here. We have one question here from someone. What strategies can be used to prevent miscommunication between AI and non-AI stakeholders in decision-making processes? Again, this is about making sure that the leaders who are in the decision-making process are absolutely aligned in terms of what the strategy is and how you're going to communicate it. Again, this is why I think that proactive thinking about communications and alignment is so important. I think about it as singing from the same songbook. You can have different harmonies and different lines that you say, but you're still singing the same song. And so if there are disagreements about those things, those need to be hashed out before you take it out. So the key stakeholders in the whole strategy process need to be really clear about what is the story we're trying to communicate. And again, the best strategies are very, very simple. This is where we want to play. This is how we're going to win. This is how generative AI is going to help us win. It is not about individual use cases, which again can confuse people because people are saying different things. You can talk about use cases and applications, but it's in service of that high level story and strategy you're trying to create. All right. I love this thing about trust and communication. So bridging the communications gap is key. It's all about being transparent. Yes, absolutely. Explaining why AI is being used, offering the right training for everyone, open feedback loops, early involvement with everybody. How are you planning to get everyone on board? And again, this is a transformation. It is a movement that you are building. And recognizing that right from the very beginning is absolutely key. All right, here's a question. Does it dissolve the boundaries between frontline workers and administrative management? I wish, Jay, I wish that we could remove this power distance between people. And I think it has been shrinking quite a bit. I think there is still going to always be some hierarchies, even organizations that are very flat have hierarchies. And what's different, though, I think, is that as a leader, you're going to be in this very, very interesting position very soon where your employees will know more about how to do the job than you did. So you probably got promoted as a leader up and through the organization because you knew how to do things really well. And so you got promoted to help all the other people on your team know how to do their job. And this just continues to progress. But with AI, you're going to be in a situation where your teams will be coming up and leading themselves on the best practices, how to get things done. And that is fundamentally going to change the relationship between leaders and their team members. And I don't think that many leaders are prepared for this. And so that's part of the change management that needs to happen too, as well. All right. I think those are the key questions that were being asked. I just have a couple more comments here. Here are my white slides now. Just a couple last best practices. And the first one is, again, that consistent messaging to make sure anybody who goes near this is saying the same narrative. Again, they don't have to use the exact same words. There's a lot of flexibility here, but being really clear and being able to answer those three questions for themselves and to encourage and help people answer those three questions of where are we headed? Where is our future? What's our strategy to get there? And what is my role in making that strategy a success? Make sure that is the job of leaders, is to make sure people can answer all of those three questions, and that's it. I think another really good practice is to incorporate generative AI into the career discussions that people are having. So you have these meetings, maybe it's once a year, maybe you're lucky to have quarterly discussions with people, but say, how are we going to use generative AI? What are the skills and capabilities that you want to have? What are the gaps that you see? And again, to develop that level of transparency and trust and provide that scaffolding for your team members to be able to move into the space. And then finally, it's so important to, I think, recognize early AI champions. Oftentimes, these are the people who are shunned as the crazy people who are doing risky things and they're doing things under their behind sort of in the dark because they're quote not allowed to do things. And you want to bring them into the light, give them the training, and encourage them to be proactive in helping not only their teams but potentially the entire organization and how to get up to speed. So putting them front and center, showing that this can happen up and down throughout the entire organization because they can answer those three questions and are being really proactive in making this happen. So those are just a few couple of best practices there. I see this one question from Natalie. I'm curious how you help comms leaders themselves feel comfortable with AI so they can encourage adoption within their teams. This is a great question. And oftentimes, when I work with organizations, I encourage, and I'm training the senior leaders on how to use this. And my requests, and sometimes they actually do about 25% of the time they will do this. I ask to have the comms team be trained too as well. So in fact, I ask them to be trained before I train the senior leaders because they have to feel very comfortable talking about these things and supporting their leaders in comms. And they can't do that if they themselves don't understand and fear this. So they're kind of writing the comms for themselves. And this is such an important step, Natalie. Thank you for bringing this up. That training your leaders on how to communicate and then training the communicators on how to use these tools is a really important first step. I think the communicators themselves are overlooked, and I think HR is oftentimes overlooked because it's a technology, right? Isn't that the domain of the IT department or digital? And yes, they are the ones who are using these technologies. But again, transformations have never, ever been about the technology. It has always been about the people and how we communicate with them, how we talk about developing them, Communications and HR is absolutely key. So get them trained up first and foremost. Okay, I love this thing from Jay that you learn it outward bound. See, act, do. Yeah, so you see it happening, you act, and you actually go do it. Great comments there. All right, that's what I have for today. Hope that was helpful. You can get the slides again at cli-ai.com-comms. Again, just feel free to ask me any, send me any questions that you may have. I'm happy to address them. And next week, it will be talking about how to assess your generative AI initiatives. So, what I'm finding is that people have done a lot of the work around identifying how to create value, identifying the top ways and the gaps that they can fill. And then they go, well, can we actually do this? Is this feasible? Do we have the skills and capabilities? And how do we actually fill them out? So I think this is a key thing. And I'm going to be talking about what are some of the key capabilities to be assessing and how to measure them. Fingers crossed, I'll also have some maturity models I can share with you by next week. And I think this is a really important step because it's one thing to have an aspirational strategy. Now, this is the plan where the place where you go into planning and saying, what are the capabilities? What are the skills that we have to put in place? And how do you figure out what to do first, second, and third? So we'll be talking next week about how do you do an assessment about your capabilities versus the initiatives that you want to create. So this is not the capabilities in isolation. It's really driven by the initiatives you want to do and the capabilities required to execute on that. And we'll talk about ways to fill those gaps. All right, lots to cover. We covered a lot today. Good luck with your communicating. I would love to hear any best practices that you have. Please send them to me, email me, find me on social, and I will see you next week. Enjoy all the various adventures that you have with generative AI, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.